everyone. This is Manny, and I'm here with Dark Phoenix Events. And today we're going to talk about Ghosts of Saltmarsh, a piratey, watery a set of adventure stories for game masters. And so I brought Dark Phoenix Events to talk about what do GMs or dungeon masters need to do to prepare a piratey, watery adventure. So I will pass the baton toward. Please, I'm sorry. Please introduce yourselves.
Go ahead. Why don't you
My name's Steve Price. I'm marketing director for Dark Phoenix Game Con.
My name is Petra Jackal. I'm co-owner of Dark Phoenix Events and one of the directors for the Dark Phoenix Game Con.
And I'm Scott Legault. I am the other co-owner for Dark Phoenix Events and another director for Dark Phoenix Game Con.
Excellent. So, what do you do to prepare for it?
Well, when I make a campaign or a game up, I'm what they call a plumber. Like I research, sailing terms, how things worked. But I also try to keep in mind sort of the game mechanics of it. Like if you have a spellcaster on a wooden ship, you're not going to want to see fireballs flying around a lot. And also just sort of trying to figure out a way to bring ship-to-ship combat, to be able to scale from ship to ship to person relatively easily, having the right maps and all that stuff prepared ahead of time.
So, well, and same question to you.
So my style's a little bit different. I'm less into the mechanics of a game. I'm much more into the story and the fun and trying to make a story that's alive. The nice thing about pirate adventures is there's so much to pull from. Everybody loves pirates, and the storylines are very rich. So I'm kind of excited to see this game system to come out to see what they've done with it. But it really should be about the progression of the story, bring in those quintessential essence of pirates and what they do and the swashbuckling and the ship-to-ship combat and all of those little pieces of it that make a game fun for people at the table.
Okay, same question.
So, for example, Dark Phoenix has done a lot of pirate stuff. We've done a LARP. We've done a murder mystery. We just finished last summer. We ran a two GM pirate game where we had two rival groups land on an island looking for treasure, and by the end of it, they had to cooperate at the end. But whoever was left, and it was very exciting. We actually had one group trying to kill the other group for a little while, and especially
that was fun.
her. But no, it's pirates are something that most people can identify with. It's a common genre. We see it on TV. We see it in movies all the way back to the black and whites. It's a romanced. It has a romanticism to it that people are like, oh, pirates. You just watch the old swashbuckling Errol Flynn movies and stuff, all the way up to the Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing. So people easily identify with it. So you can pull from all that to add to your game. Cheesy accents, the whole deal, all comes into play. And we have not run a pirate game yet that people haven't been like, oh my God, that was the blast. So,
Well, you mentioned before about research. Let me bring you this question. What would be some of your inspirations that you would personally use for this type of adventure? Is there certain movies? Is there certain books that you have a personal favorite towards, or that you would bring into this adventure?
It's probably for me movies. Like I love Errol Flynn swashbuckling stuff, and it's cool to be able to simulate that. And even just like bringing in horror concepts into that scenario of ghost ships and so how do you make a magic cannonball to hit a ghost ship kind of thing. So and it's also fun just to sort of pull from Pirates of the Caribbean is obviously the most recent and the most popular.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Oh,
Classic pirate movie.
Yeah.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah. So yeah, it's fun to let people sort of pick the type of character they want to be and then create the environment around them. So
I like to pull in a little bit of some campiness, some cult classics like Princess Bride. Not that it was necessarily a pirate movie, but there were certain pirate elements in it, as well as things like Pirates of the Caribbean. The mythical stuff that's in there is a lot of fun as well, and people identify with that because they know it. So it's good to bring those into, and when somebody picks up a character, they're like, oh, this one reminds me of so and so, and they automatically have a buy-in to the character, and they automatically know exactly how they're going to play it, even if it's only a 4-hour segment. So.
And I think you need to challenge your players with different stuff. So, for example, years ago, I had a campaign. It was an island campaign, and in the course of the adventures, they came across the gnomes in my world were kind of like the engineers. They had created a submarine. It was powered by bound elementals, and they had lightning guns on it. So they come across this. They're in the ship, and the gnomes had actually been captured by drow, and they had seized the ship. So they attacked the players with it. Very, very fun combat. Something different. The ship rises out of the water, starts firing bolts of lightning at the ship. It was high magic, but it was pretty cool. So.
Okay.
And also, pirates tie in so well with steampunk and that kind of stuff too, that you can really.
They're pretty cross genre.
Yeah, you can pull from a lot of different sources to make it cool.
Yeah, airship pirates. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up. I remember the first pirate movie I've been exposed to is I don't know if you would know this. It's called The Pirate Movie. It's kind of a parody.
I think I have seen that.
It's a very, very silly movie. But that was my first pirate movie, and I think when the 80s and 90s came about, and people asked me to do a watery adventure, the only thing I could really pull from that I thought was exciting to me, because at the time pirates back then until Pirates of the Caribbean came out, I felt like pirates weren't taking that seriously in media. There wasn't that many great at least for me, books and movies out at the time, like that made me interested in doing an adventure like that. But I went back to Zelda, and the Watery Temple.
Yep.
So I created an adventure where they had to go out at sea, and then there was this passage that would open up, and the ocean would open up, and they had to go down to this Watery Temple and everything. But a little personal stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I have a COC game, which is piratey. I can't say too much in case anybody plays it, but it's set in the Bermuda Triangle, and it's a time element, so there are pirate ships in it. So it's kind of cool.
So would you advise players that want to play a piratey adventure, what characters would you tell them not to? Is there anything you advise them not to make? Is there certain character classes or races that may not fit well?
I would say that if you're going to be on a ship, or you're going to spend a fair amount of time on a ship, you're probably not going to want to be wearing plate armor.
And
not
the
that you
super
couldn't be a
large
fighter.
races.
Yeah.
You probably want to stay away from the slow, cumbersome tank-style fighters, although you can play one. So, I think I personally, in my time playing games on the sea, I tend towards roguish characters, or I'd say rogues. So
yeah, I think one word of caution to have is not so much in races or classes, but player types. Like, if you're going to have somebody play the captain of a ship, you've got to make sure they don't rule with an iron hand, because it's just going to ruin the fun for everybody. If suddenly the group is making a decision and the guy's, well, I'm the captain, so I get fun. That didn't work that way on pirate ships in real life. So it shouldn't. You shouldn't let one player have that much control in your. Depending how well you know your players and how mature they are, it can work, but it can also turn bad.
Yeah. Do you feel that it's helpful or essential to know the technical stuff of being at sea? For example, I went to see Old Ironhide, Boston. Now I'm a New Yorker, lived in the city my whole life. Don't hate the beach. But I went out and I checked it out, and I being in that boat and checking everything out, it gave me a better idea of how to set up adventures in a ship.
The size,
How do you feel about that?
I think that you need, if you're going to actually run a campaign or even a module that is about the sea, you should do some research. You should know, port aft, some sailing terms, how sailing ships actually worked, is a good thing to know.
Any particular books or movies or some sort of sources?
Books. I'll be honest, I do a lot of research. I just go on Google and look stuff up and get terminology and then look up that. And movie wise, I hate to go back to it, but the Pirates of the Caribbean series shows a lot about ships. So,
But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
okay.
It depends on like how granular as a game master you want to get with this stuff. Like you could, Master and Commander and Pirates of the Caribbean
Excellent
are both
movies.
sailboat movies,
Yep.
but they, Pirates of the Caribbean isn't worried about so much the wind and the
Right.
tacking against, where Master and Commander is more all about it. So
Yep.
it comes down to the feel of the game. Do you want the characters to be
Yeah, it's how mechanical
Yeah.
you are.
So to be the
Yep.
different person from these two here, again, they're much more technically and mechanically inclined into the rule systems and realism, and a little bit more on what actually occurs as
The
mechanics.
physics of it. Yeah.
I care less about that. Not that I care less, but I care less about that. And it's, for me, I don't know that it really matters if you know how to tack against the wind, or you know how to, as long as the story is rich, as long as the storyline is a good storyline, those very granular pieces don't matter so much. It doesn't matter. It just really depends on your style as a game master and your style as a player.
It's whether you want it to be a game mechanic or a set dressing, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I enjoy terrorizing my players. And
no,
I
not at all.
like being really creative with what type of monsters that
Okay.
I will use in my scenarios. Most experienced players tend to know the monster manual back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll have to create something on
Yep.
the spot.
Throw something at 'em.
And the sea is great for that because
That is.
even today the sea in our time is still a lot of unknowns
Mysteries.
there.
Yep.
So what would you do creatively, monster wise or enemy wise?
Okay.
What would you do for like a water based campaign?
All right. So one time we had, like I said, the drow. We had the drow with the submarine. We also had a large entity, which was actually almost island size, like this giant creature, which is back. Things had been built on over time. There was a small island, and the creature was affected all the things on it, could control them all mentally. So when the players landed on the island, they were besieged by these things. They didn't know why, and it was actually this entity that was actually the island itself. So that was something different. I also did one time a Sargasso Sea kind of creature where once the ships were all caught in the doldrums of the seaweed, there was actually a moor in the center, and it was slowly pulling things towards it, and they had to find a way to fight it and get out. So those are two that I remember offhand. So
I think octopuses are great, and they're so smart, and they're so rich, and combine an octopus and a mind flayer and those kind of aspects, and just big things. When you think about the ocean and the really deep levels, and you see some of the creatures that come out of that, is completely fantastical, but they're real. Angler fishes and the really strange looking creatures that come out of the really deep portions of the ocean are just cool. I mean, you look at Nemo's stuff and all the
Captain Nemo. Yeah.
it's amazing, the stuff that can come out of that, and it's a fertile ground.
Yes. I'd like in a lighter pirate-based campaign, I'd like him up with like dire whales, just take some of the land-based concepts and bring them to dire octopus or squid. In a more deep game that I ran, I wanted the campaign to be like a Call of Cthulhu game where the players were actually the cultists, but they didn't know it.
That's
And
awesome.
so there was this sleeping goddess of the sea that they were trying to wake up, and that didn't end well for them. But
Or anyone else, right?
Right.
So,
So what I want to touch a little bit about magic. I know we talked a little bit about like please don't cast fireballs if you're on a ship, especially in the middle of nowhere. But is there anything else you want to touch on about magic? Is there some things that you would think would be helpful to players to know, or
Water breathing?
Master?
Flying is huge for any kind of spellcasting class at sea, because you take out the possibility of them falling over the side and having an issue there, and they have they get height, levitate, fly.
Water
I
walk.
think it's big one to have if you're going to be at sea.
Wind
So,
powers.
wind stuff,
Yeah.
yep, gust of wind.
Is
you
super,
know,
super useful.
A druid can be a ship's best friend
Yes,
or worst
can.
enemy.
Enemy,
Yeah.
right,
Warp-
exactly.
Warp wood can
Warp
be
wood,
destructive
yeah,
to a
that's a
ship.
good
you
one,
know,
too.
so there's a lot of things
I've
like
used that
so.
effectively. Even water magic was one campaign that
Oh my
I
God.
had
Lower water.
it was a lower water spell, and
Destroy
there
the
was
ship.
this orc ship that was coming after us, and so I said, well, I'd like to pour all my powers into lower water, and I did it right in front of the hull of the ship, and it tipped right into it and completely destroyed the ship. And the GM was just like, okay, that's not what I was expecting. He just took away my major characters class there. So it was, I think, being creative in
Yeah,
the
you gotta be
spells that you
creative.
have
Yeah.
and looking at it differently. If you're in a land-based versus a water-based society, you're looking at different ways to
Right.
manipulate the spells. And depending on how loose your GM is with what you do with it, you know, if you can get your mindset into, okay, so I'm not on a land base, what can I do with the water as my land?
And I think it's important for game masters to be flexible too, because you're dealing in an environment that you're probably not used to
Yeah,
dealing with, and
right.
people are going to use spells and
And
magic
people are going to
differently.
try different things,
Yeah.
which is important. You know, it's
So-
all about the game. Is not just like, oh, this. I don't play with the rules being a iron structure that we have to go. There's some play in there. You know, if you can just say how I use this spell in this situation, and it sounds, I'll be like, yeah, you can try that. So, you know.
Yeah, and it's a sign of a good game master when you take their major fight and
Yep.
just completely trash it with one spell for them to say, well, okay, rather than to negate what you're trying to do. That's
Yeah.
a sign of a good game
You know,
master.
you want your players to think and
Yeah.
act and to plan, you know. So
Yeah, I think
Yes.
my favorite thing I've ever read when it came to like magic on a ship was the Ari Salvatore did it for a while. We all know who Ari Salvatore
Yes.
is, and his
Yes,
Drizzy
we do.
series, and who's local in New England.
Yes, he is.
And he at one point Drizzy was at sea, and he described a scenario where these wizards, there was ships fighting each other. Each one had a wizard, and each one was doing different things, fighting each other back and forth. And that was pretty creative. I was like, oh, that like kind of opened my mind. Like, oh, you could get really wild out
Oh
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
I actually, I read a book once. I can't remember the name of the author or the book, but the concept was, an ocean-based adventure, and that sailors hated having mad casters on their boats because sailors have a name for everything. There's an order. There's everything about the ship.
Superstition there. Yeah.
Well, it's not just superstition. That magic was chaotic. Like
Yeah.
it could disrupt the order of the boat, and it was just a really neat
That's kinda
idea. Yeah.
So, would you recommend any? Right here we have a bunch of dice and this really cool Dark Phoenix events bag right in front. But would you recommend any like accessories for dungeon masters to get for a water-based campaign? Should they?
Sure. There's a whole line now. You can get everything from the flip mats and all that. That's all great stuff. If you, I think, I don't use miniatures in COC, but I like using miniatures in Dungeons and Dragons and anything from old school to 5e. And I think there's a whole plethora of stuff. When we started, we used to draw the ships out. Matter of fact, I still have mine. They draw them out on graph paper, and it's this giant thing you unfold. You remember that? We used to use it. But now you can get a miniature of that now, or you can get a flip map. I think that's great stuff to have. So
Yeah, I know that you can buy PDFs of shipboard layouts, and I printed those out and actually put them on foam to back up, so you could just pull, depending how far deep in the action is going on the boat. And also I used just little cardboard ships. There was a game way back when that was sold in collectible packs that you could get these ships and they just snap together, and they were great for
bigger combat,
Yeah.
for ship
Yeah.
combat. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think just again having the drawings or the maps that you can draw of the actual layout of the ships and the insides of the ships or where they are in relation to each other just makes it much easier as a
Visually,
player visually to understand if I'm a magic user or I'm an archer or whatever I am as a character. It gives a better comparison to understand, and everybody has the same viewpoint. right? To say, oh yeah, this we could possibly do this and that, and it helps the mechanics of the game and kind of having everybody work collaboratively together with each other. I think that's an easier when you have the visuals.
The other thing you have to remember too, if you are fighting on a ship, it's an isolated space. They're generally small. Even big ships were really, technically, compared to like out in the environment, it was a small area. Fight under decks, low ceilings, a lot of stuff hanging. You kind of, as a GM, take that into play, and when you see combat, all that swashbuckling, people flipping around things and stuff. It's a lot of stuff in the way, make people make the rolls to try to get around stuff, and immerse them in that environment. So.
Okay, excellent. Well, before we wrap up, is there any last tips?
Well, I just want to say I'm looking forward to the Saltmarsh thing coming out. I'm looking forward to reading it, and checking it out. Tips: have fun. That's the big one.
That's
Have
exactly
fun.
true.
You should have fun. Your players should have fun. That's what it's about. All gaming is really just about telling a story together and having fun. And however you get there.
Be flexible, be creative, take input from your players.
Arg.
Arg.
Make a soundtrack. There is so much great piratey folk music out there that can really inspire your players.
Sea shanties, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're interested, if you're looking for a dungeon master to help run this campaign coming out from Dungeons and Dragons, feel free to reach out to Dark Phoenix Events. I'll put a link down here. And don't forget also that they're having a convention coming up next year. Check that out. I'll put the same information down at the bottom. And thank you very much for watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.